You trusted them with your heart, gave them pieces of yourself no one else had ever seen, and still, they broke you, not by accident, but by choice. They knew what they were doing. The late replies, the lies, the way they made you feel small when you needed love the most. You kept blaming yourself, thinking maybe if you were just a little better, a little quieter, a little more, they would have stayed. But they never planned to. They just liked the control. You weren't hard to love. They just weren't capable of real love. Now you sit in silence, staring at the ceiling, wondering how someone who once made you feel alive could also be the one who made you feel invisible. And that silence, it's louder than any scream. You're not broken, you're bruised, and bruises heal. But this version of you, the one rising, they'll never see that coming. Betrayal changes something in you. It's not just a moment, it leaves a mark. You start looking at yourself differently. At first, you try to make sense of it. You replay conversations, remember their eyes when they said they loved you, think about how their touch felt real. But love doesn't come with hidden knives. And what they did wasn't love. It was control, it was selfishness, it was convenience. And now you're left holding pieces of a reality that was never truly yours. The silence after betrayal is the hardest part. It's heavy. It follows you into the shower, into bed, into work. You try to act normal, but everything inside feels shattered. The worst part, no one can see the wound. It's invisible, but it bleeds every time you think about them. And you think about them more than you want to admit. Even when you're angry, even when you know they were wrong, your heart still aches. You question your worth. Were you not enough? Were you too much? What did they want that you didn't give? And it messes with your confidence. Suddenly, you can't look in the mirror without hearing their criticisms. The small jabs, the passive-aggressive comments, the things they said in anger that now feel like truth. It lingers. Betrayal doesn't just break your heart. It distorts your reflection. There's shame, too, the kind that creeps up when you're lying in bed at night. You blame yourself for staying too long, for believing their lies, for not walking away when the red flags waved in your face. You knew better. But knowing and acting are two different things when you love someone. Love makes you hopeful. Betrayal makes you feel stupid for hoping. Loneliness hits hard. Even when you're surrounded by people, there's this empty space in your chest. No one else can fill it. You feel disconnected because the one person you opened up to is now the reason you feel closed off. And it's hard to trust again. Every kind word from someone else feels suspicious. Every compliment feels like a trap. You start expecting the worst, even from the best people. Anger comes next. Not always loudly. Sometimes it's quiet, simmering beneath the surface. You get irritated by things that never used to bother you. You feel your heart race over small triggers. A song, a smell, a place that reminds you of them. The memories don't just fade, they haunt. You feel robbed of peace, robbed of the love you gave so freely. You want justice, you want closure. But betrayal rarely comes with either. Some days you convince yourself you've moved on. You keep yourself busy. You smile when people ask how you're doing. But healing doesn't follow a schedule. One text, one memory, one dream, and you're back to square one. It's exhausting. The process feels unfair. They moved on so easily. You watch them laugh, date someone new, act like you never existed, and that hurts more than you expected. Because how can they move forward while you're still struggling to breathe? But even through all this, there's one truth. Betrayal reveals who someone really is. And it reveals something about you too. Your loyalty, your depth, your willingness to love with everything you had, those aren't weaknesses. They're proof that you were real, that what you felt was true. The lie wasn't your love, it was their intention. It's hard to talk about betrayal without talking about manipulation. The way they twisted words, made you question your reality, made you feel guilty for asking for basic respect. You started apologizing for having needs, for having emotions. You lowered your standards just to keep the peace. And peace never came. They were never satisfied because it was never about love. It was about control. Gaslighting is real. It makes you feel crazy. You remember saying something and they swore it never happened. You caught them lying and they somehow turned it around on you. The emotional exhaustion builds up until you start second-guessing everything, including your own memory. That's not love. That's abuse wrapped in sweet words and fake smiles. You learn how easy it is for someone to pretend, how easily they can play roles, say the right things, wear the mask. And when the mask falls, you're left staring at a stranger, someone you never really knew. And that's terrifying, because it makes you question everyone. Who else is pretending? Who else is hiding behind kindness? The loss of trust is brutal. It bleeds into every part of life. Friendships, family, work. You start building walls without meaning to, smiling while staying guarded. You want to believe again. But belief feels dangerous. Vulnerability feels like a risk you can't afford to take twice. But still, no one sees the internal war you fight. They don't see how strong you're trying to be. They don't see the mornings you wake up feeling empty, but still get out of bed. They don't hear the conversations you have with yourself, trying to stay grounded, trying not to fall back into thinking maybe they'll come back, maybe they'll change, maybe it wasn't that bad. But it was, and some part of you knows that. That's why it hurts so much. You loved with honesty. You were loyal when it wasn't easy. You stayed when you should have left, and in return, you were betrayed. That's not weakness, that's heart, that's character. And they lost that, not you. You didn't lose something precious. They did. You didn't fail at love. They failed at being human. People will say, move on, as if it's that simple. They'll say, let it go, forgive. But they don't know the nights you cried so hard your chest ached. They don't know how you hid your tears in the bathroom, how you forced a smile in public, how you kept waiting for an apology that never came. Moving on isn't an on-off switch. It's a process, and it starts with telling the truth to yourself. You are hurt, you were betrayed, and it mattered. Your pain is valid. Your tears were not for nothing, and your anger is justified. The betrayal changed you, but that change isn't the end. It's a beginning, not the kind that starts with forgetting, but the kind that starts with finally seeing things clearly. No more excuses, no more romanticizing the past, just truth, hard, painful, necessary truth. Because once you face the truth, you stop asking why. You stop waiting for answers. You stop needing closure. And that's when things start to shift. Slowly, quietly, without force. The healing doesn't scream. It whispers. It shows up when you look in the mirror and recognize yourself again. When your smile isn't forced. When your sleep is peaceful. When your laugh is real. But for now, the pain is still there. And that's okay, because it means your heart still works. You still care. And that's something betrayal couldn't take from you. It hits you one day. Not with fireworks or some big revelation, but in the stillness. You're sitting there, tired of crying, tired of pretending to be okay, tired of waiting for them to feel sorry. And something clicks. Not all at once, not in a dramatic moment, but slowly, clearly. You realize they weren't broken. They were just selfish. It wasn't about what you lacked. It was about what they never had: honesty, empathy, maturity. You spent so long trying to fix something that wasn't yours to fix, trying to hold together a bond they were determined to break. You begged for effort, loyalty, respect, and they couldn't give it. Not because you weren't worth it, but because they weren't capable. There's a silence that follows that realization, a painful, honest silence. You sit with it. No more blaming yourself. No more rewriting the past to make it easier to swallow. You stop defending them in your head. You stop romanticizing the good moments. Yes, there were smiles, laughter, days when it felt real. But that doesn't erase the manipulation, the gaslighting, the lies, the betrayal. It doesn't excuse the way they left you bleeding while acting like the victim. You remember all the times you lowered your voice just to avoid a fight. All the times you forgave without an apology. The way you started hiding parts of yourself to keep the peace. You gave more than you had, and they took it without care. And now, you're left empty. But in that emptiness, something else begins to form. A kind of quiet strength. At first, it's just a whisper in the back of your mind. This won't break me. It doesn't scream. It doesn't fight. It just sits with you. And little by little, it grows. You start to see the truth. You were loyal, even when it hurt. You stood by someone who didn't know how to stand by you. You were love. They were convenience. You brought depth. They stayed surface level. You craved growth. They feared it. The relationship wasn't balanced, and it never was. You tried to build a home where they were just passing time. And that realization hurts, because you believed, you hoped, you wanted it to work. But now, you stop trying to fix what broke you. Rock bottom isn't loud, it's quiet. It's waking up with no motivation, no joy, no sense of direction. It's going through the motions, pretending to care. It's breaking down over small things. A song, a random memory, a photo you forgot to delete. It's numbness. It's that moment when even pain feels distant. But the beauty of rock bottom is there's nowhere lower to go. And that's where something shifts. Not because you feel strong, but because you're tired of feeling weak. You start getting angry, not at yourself this time, but at the lies you believed, at the way you were treated, at the way you were taught to settle for less. That anger lights a fire. It fuels action. You stop waiting for closure. You stop stalking their social media, hoping they miss you. You start focusing on your own reflection, on the person you became through all of it. You clean your space, you go outside, you breathe deeper. You stop apologizing for your emotions. You allow yourself to grieve, properly, honestly. No more shame, no more pretending. And in that raw, broken space, you start rebuilding, slowly, on your own terms. You read things that nourish your mind. You move your body, even when it hurts. You speak kindly to yourself, even when your mind still clings to old lies. You sit with the pain instead of escaping it. You start learning who you are without them. And for the first time, that thought doesn't scare you. It empowers you. You realize you never needed them to complete you. You needed peace, you needed truth, you needed safety. And now, you're learning how to give that to yourself. The more you heal, the more you see the red flags you ignored, the patterns, the manipulation, the way they projected their wounds onto you, the way they made you responsible for their happiness while ignoring your pain. You start connecting the dots. It wasn't love. It was control wrapped in charm. You feel lighter, not because it stopped hurting, but because you stopped carrying the blame. You start trusting your instincts again. You start believing your gut, that voice you silenced for their comfort. You let it speak, loudly, clearly. You start saying no without guilt. You start walking away from anything that reminds you of how they treated you, because now you know your value. This shift doesn't happen overnight. Some days the old pain still knocks. Some nights the memories still sting. But now, you don't let it define you. You don't stay in that place. You allow the emotion, but you don't set up camp in it. You've been through enough. You deserve peace. And more than that, you've earned it. You stop wishing them well in your prayers. Not because you hate them, but because you're too focused on healing yourself. You don't need to carry the weight of their redemption. That's their burden. Yours is rebuilding, reclaiming your time, your energy, your future. You become less reactive, more focused. You start seeing the strength in silence, in peace, in discipline. The people around you start noticing. You speak differently, stand taller. There's a calm in your eyes, a presence, a quiet power. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that doesn't flinch. They feel it, even if they don't understand it, because something inside you has changed. You're not the same. You don't seek validation anymore. You don't beg for clarity. You don't chase people who walk away. They can't manipulate you anymore. Not with apologies, not with guilt, not with sweet words. You've heard it all before. And now, you see through it. You recognize patterns. You trust your boundaries, and you defend them, not out of fear, but out of love, for yourself, for your peace, for the person you're becoming. This is where the shift becomes real. You go from being the broken one to being the one they never saw coming, the one who got back up, the one who turned pain into progress. Not because someone saved you, but because you chose not to stay broken. You decided your story wasn't going to end in betrayal. You chose to write a new chapter, one where you're the hero, one where you protect your heart, where you don't settle, where you don't shrink. This pain didn't destroy you. It woke you up, and now you know your power, not because someone gave it to you, but because you found it when no one else believed in you. When you were alone, crying, trying to hold yourself together. That's where strength is born, not in comfort, but in rising from chaos. And now you rise, not for revenge, not for validation, but for you, because you're finally done breaking yourself to keep others whole. Because now, you protect your peace at all costs. Pain can either break you or build you. After betrayal, you don't come back as the same person. You either stay stuck in the wreckage or decide to rise. Not just to heal, but to transform. That kind of transformation doesn't happen overnight. It starts with tiny, silent decisions you make when no one's watching. Like getting out of bed when your heart still feels heavy. Like looking in the mirror and refusing to believe the lies they made you believe about yourself. That's the first brick in rebuilding who you are. And this time, you build stronger. The first thing that changes is your mindset. It shifts from, why did they hurt me, to how do I take my power back? You begin to speak differently to yourself. No more self-blame. You start using your voice to protect instead of punish. You write affirmations on sticky notes. Maybe at first it feels silly, but over time, the words start to feel real. I am not what they said I was. My value doesn't depend on someone's ability to love me. I will not shrink for anyone. These aren't just phrases. They become mental armor. They remind you every day that you're rebuilding from the inside out. Discipline becomes your foundation. Emotional chaos teaches you the importance of routine. You wake up at the same time. You keep promises to yourself, even small ones like drinking more water or making your bed. Because when everything else feels unpredictable, those little wins give you control. You stop waiting to feel motivated. Motivation fades, but discipline stays. And through discipline, you start creating structure where there used to be emotional mess. The gym replaces old habits, not just for physical change, but because lifting something heavy reminds you that you're capable of carrying your own weight. That strength isn't just about muscle, it's about mental survival. Then comes the hard part, setting boundaries. You realize you tolerated too much, said yes when you meant no, laughed off disrespect to keep peace. But now you speak up. You say no without guilt. You walk away from energy that drains you, and you don't explain yourself. You used to think boundaries would push people away. Now you know the right people will respect them. You teach others how to treat you by how you treat yourself. You're no longer desperate for love. You're selective with access. You also start to value solitude, not because you've given up on people, but because you've found peace in your own company. You stop trying to fill the silence. Instead, you sit with it. You listen to your thoughts. You let yourself cry without shame. And somewhere in that stillness, you start hearing your own voice again. The voice that was drowned out by their manipulation. It's quiet at first, but it grows stronger with time. That's emotional independence. The realization that your happiness can't be outsourced, that no one else is responsible for your peace. You stop texting people who don't check in. You stop hoping they'll change. You stop begging for closure, because closure isn't something they give. It's something you build. You learn how to soothe your own wounds. You hold space for your own emotions. And it's hard, because you used to lean on them for validation. Now, you learn to validate yourself. Not everything they said about you was true. In fact, most of it came from their own wounds, not yours. You start reading again, listening to podcasts, feeding your mind instead of numbing it. You're not running from pain anymore. You're rebuilding from it. You start chasing knowledge, not distractions. You're hungry to understand yourself, to grow beyond the version of you that tolerated pain for love. You realize growth is slow and often boring, but it's real. And every time you choose self-respect over attention, you grow stronger. The revenge you used to fantasize about, the kind that hurt them back, starts to change. It evolves into something higher. You stop caring if they see your glow up. You stop stalking their social media. You stop reacting. Because now, your revenge is in your silence, in your success, in your peace. They no longer live rent-free in your mind. You've evicted them from your thoughts. That is power. Not the kind that needs to be loud, but the kind that makes people wonder how you became so untouchable. You find new purpose. Maybe you start creating. Maybe you pour your pain into your art, your work, your goals, and you stop waiting to be rescued. You rescue yourself, one decision at a time. You surround yourself with people who don't drain you. You find joy in the ordinary, sunsets, music, quiet walks. You remember how to laugh without feeling guilty. You stop flinching when someone shows you kindness. And slowly, life doesn't feel like a battlefield anymore. But it's not all perfect. Healing isn't linear. Some days old memories hit like a punch to the chest. You might still hear their voice in your head, but now you answer back. You remind yourself of how far you've come. You remind yourself that you're no longer the version of you that accepted the bare minimum. You've outgrown that chapter. Not because it didn't matter, but because you do. You may not recognize yourself in the mirror, and that's okay. Growth changes your face. The sadness fades. The spark returns. And there's a fierceness in your eyes that wasn't there before. A knowing, a calm strength that doesn't need validation. You used to be soft for the wrong reasons. Now you're strong for the right ones. You also stop romanticizing pain. You stop seeing loyalty as staying no matter what. You learn that walking away is sometimes the bravest thing you can do. You realize self-worth isn't loud, it's quiet. It's choosing peace over chaos, respect over attention, real over temporary. You no longer need closure from them because you've closed the door yourself. Every morning, you wake up with choices, to look back or to move forward. And now, you choose forward. Not because you've forgotten, but because you've forgiven yourself for what you didn't know. That's growth, that's strength, that's healing. You're not the same. And that's the point. You're becoming someone even betrayal can't break. You thought it was love. The way they looked at you, how they knew just what to say, how they made you feel seen in a way no one else ever had. In the beginning it felt effortless. They seemed kind, attentive, even protective. You thought you were safe. You thought you had found someone who truly understood you. But love doesn't change its tone overnight. Love doesn't become cold without explanation. It doesn't punish silence with silence. It doesn't love bomb and then vanish. That's how you learn what fake love looks like. It always starts out warm. It gives you everything too fast. They open up too soon, tell you things they shouldn't, make promises that feel too big for how little time you've known each other. But you take it all in because it feels real. It feels special. You believe you're the exception, not the pattern. You believe you're the reason they've changed. You're not. That's their trick. Fake love always needs validation. They needed your attention, your energy, your admiration. Not because they valued it, but because it fed them. It made them feel powerful. They learned how to get what they want by pretending to give you what you need. You told them your fears. They remembered them and used them later. You told them what hurt you in the past, and somehow they ended up doing the same things. The mask didn't fall all at once. It slipped slowly through broken promises, half-hearted apologies, and repeated mistakes disguised as accidents. You kept forgiving them because you thought love meant patience. You thought it meant holding on even when it got hard. You gave them chances because you believed in their potential. But real love doesn't ask you to break yourself in half just to keep someone whole. It doesn't make you beg to be treated with respect. It doesn't silence your voice. It doesn't confuse your gut. But fake love always does. They wore a mask, and they wore it well. In public, they were charming. With your friends, they acted sweet. On social media, they painted a perfect story. Behind closed doors, though, it was different. Coldness, distance, control. They knew what to say when you started pulling away. They knew how to keep you tethered. It wasn't love. It was strategy. The scariest part, you didn't see it right away. And when you finally did, you still tried to hold on. Because the mask they wore in the beginning is the one you kept hoping would return. You thought the real them was the version who loved you, not the one who left you crying yourself to sleep. But now you understand. That was the mask. The real person was the one who betrayed you, the one who manipulated, the one who gaslit, the one who blamed you when things went wrong. They were never confused. They were calculated. Betrayal opened your eyes. It forced you to see the difference between someone saying they love you and someone showing it. Words are easy. Anyone can say the right things, but actions, those reveal everything. Who shows up when you're hurting? Who listens when you're silent? Who respects your boundaries without making you feel guilty for having them? Those are the real tests, and they failed them again and again. Strangely, betrayal gave you something that love couldn't. It gave you truth. It stripped the illusion. It hurt, yes, more than you can put into words, but it also gave you freedom. You stopped waiting for them to change. You stopped thinking you had to fix yourself to be worthy. You stopped trying to make someone stay who never intended to. You started choosing yourself, not because you didn't love them, but because you finally understood they didn't love you, not in the way you deserved. There's peace in that kind of freedom. Not at first. At first it feels like loss, like failure, like you weren't good enough to be loved properly. But with time, you start seeing the truth. You see that they never really knew how to love. They only knew how to take. They didn't see your soul. They saw your softness and saw an opportunity. But they didn't realize that softness came with strength, that eventually you would stop giving. And when you did, they lost access to something real. You don't chase anymore. You don't chase love, approval, or validation. You've been through enough to know your worth isn't up for negotiation. If someone wants to stay, they will. If someone wants to be in your life, they'll show up. You've stopped making excuses for people who treat you like an option. You no longer beg to be chosen. You choose. You choose who gets your energy, your time, your heart. You don't offer it blindly now. Not because you're bitter, but because you're wiser. You understand that not everyone who smiles is kind. That some people come into your life to teach you boundaries through pain. And you've learned. You've learned how to see through fake love. How to listen to actions, not just words. How to trust your intuition when something feels off. You've stopped romanticizing the people who hurt you. You don't miss who they were pretending to be. You see them clearly now. And you don't need revenge. You don't need them to apologize. You don't need them to admit what they did. Your healing isn't dependent on their guilt. It's rooted in your growth, in the way you got up when it felt impossible, in the way you started putting yourself first. Not as an act of defense, but as a declaration of self-respect. You still remember, not because you're holding on to the pain, but because those memories taught you everything. They taught you how not to be treated, how not to treat others. They taught you what love is not. Love is not cruelty in disguise. It's not emotional highs followed by silence. It's not feeling small so someone else can feel big. Love doesn't make you doubt your value. Now when someone tries to come close, you pay attention. Not to what they say, but how they make you feel. If your peace feels threatened, if your gut clenches, if your voice gets quieter, that's enough reason to walk away. You don't stay just because you're afraid of starting over. You've already started over. You've already survived the hardest part. And that's strength. No one can take that from you. You look back not to stay stuck in the past, but to honor what it taught you. You learned how to be alone without feeling lonely, how to set boundaries without guilt, how to say no without explaining yourself. You learned that healing isn't linear, that some days hurt more than others, but every day you choose to keep going is a victory. They thought they broke you, but what they did was reveal the fire you had buried under your softness. You're not bitter, you're better. Not because of them, but in spite of them. You've stopped begging for love. Now you sit still and let it find you. And if it doesn't come, you know how to love yourself without apology. That's the lesson betrayal gave you. Painful, yes, but priceless. There comes a moment when you look at yourself in the mirror and realize you're not the same person anymore. The pain changed something inside you. It burned away the parts that were too soft, too forgiving, too willing to overlook the damage just to keep someone close. You stopped begging for clarity. You stopped chasing closure. And with time, the desperation faded. It didn't disappear overnight, but slowly, your silence became stronger than all your words ever were. You began showing up for yourself in ways no one else ever did. You started making decisions based on self-respect, not fear of losing someone. You no longer try to explain your worth. You walk with it. The old version of you would have sent long messages, trying to be understood. You would have fought to keep the connection alive, even when it was hurting you. But not now. Now your peace means more than being heard. Silence became your shield. You learned that the loudest strength is the one that doesn't need to prove anything. And they felt it. The absence of your energy made more noise than your presence ever did. They started watching you again. Maybe not directly, but you knew. The subtle signs were there. Random texts, old photos liked, friends asking how you were. It always starts like that. The ones who left come back when they realize what they lost can't be replaced. But they didn't expect who you've become. They looked for the same softness, the same emotional attachment, the same willingness to forgive. But you weren't available in that way anymore. They remembered someone who waited for replies, who begged for time, who accepted crumbs. What they found was someone calm, someone focused, someone in control. And that scared them, because control was what they always had. They played games with your emotions because they knew you cared too much. They tested your patience because they believed you'd never walk away. And now all that power they thought they had is gone. They don't know how to handle the version of you that doesn't flinch when they speak. You stopped reacting. That's what really changed. You no longer rush to fix things that break. You don't panic when people leave. You understand that not everything lost is worth getting back. The things meant for you won't come with confusion or disrespect. And that's not arrogance. That's growth. You grew from someone who needed validation to someone who gives it to themselves. You stopped trying to prove your goodness to people who only saw your weakness. Now you don't explain your silence. You let them wonder. The new you is intentional. You don't move to be seen. You move to protect your peace. You speak less. You observe more. You've learned that most people listen to respond, not to understand. So you stopped wasting words. You've also learned the difference between loneliness and solitude. What once felt like emptiness now feels like clarity. You enjoy your own company. You don't need distractions to feel whole. And that kind of wholeness can't be manipulated. They tried to trigger the old patterns, the sudden texts, the memories, the casual, "How have you been?" hoping to reopen the door. But doors don't open the same way once you realize you are never treated like a home. You remember the silence they gave when you needed comfort, the indifference they showed when you were falling apart. You remember how hard it was to heal. So you protect yourself now, not with anger, not with revenge, but with boundaries that aren't up for negotiation. They can't reach you in the same way. You stopped being available to people who once made you feel invisible. You don't chase closure. You don't reply to half-effort messages. You don't smile at manipulation disguised as kindness. That scares them, because they were sure you'd never be able to let go. They were sure you'd always be waiting. They didn't realize they weren't dealing with the same person anymore. And that realization hurts them more than they'll ever admit. This new version of you commands respect without needing to demand it. You no longer tolerate inconsistency. You no longer explain why you walked away from disrespect. You don't justify your healing to people who only benefited from your brokenness. The confidence you now wear isn't loud, but it's real. You've built it from every broken promise, every ignored call, every night you cried yourself to sleep. They thought those moments would destroy you. Instead, they shaped you. You look at love differently now. You don't get impressed by sweet words. You've heard enough lies to know that words mean nothing without actions. You value energy, consistency, peace. You don't give chances easily because you know how much it costs to heal, and you're not willing to pay that price again for someone who hasn't changed. You've learned that walking away isn't weakness. It's wisdom. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is choose yourself, even when your heart wants to stay. You also stopped romanticizing the past. You see it for what it was, not through nostalgia, but with clarity. You understand that love without respect is manipulation, that attention without intention is selfishness. You no longer wait for people to fix what they broke. You understand that healing is your responsibility and growth is your revenge. Not the kind that seeks to prove something to others, but the kind that restores your dignity. There's a quiet kind of power in being able to face your past without flinching, in knowing you could have stayed bitter, but chose peace, in knowing you could have exposed them, but chose silence, in knowing you could have gone back, but chose to keep walking. That's strength, that's maturity, that's self-worth. You carry that now, not for them, but for you. You've become someone they never expected, someone they can't manipulate with guilt, someone they can't control with attention, someone they can't win back with empty apologies. They lost access to you the moment you realized you were the prize, and that realization changed everything. You no longer see your sensitivity as a weakness. You see it as power, because it takes strength to feel everything and still choose to heal. It takes strength to love after betrayal, but love yourself more. The power they once held over you came from your wounds. Now that those wounds are closing, so is the chapter. They don't get to come back to the version of you they broke. That version no longer exists. They see your name now, and it's no longer followed by a sense of control. It's followed by regret. Not because you are easy to lose, but because you are impossible to replace. You're calm now. That's what shocks them the most. No more emotional outbursts, no more overthinking, just clarity. You don't wish them harm. You don't wish them well either. You wish them away, not with hate, but with peace. Because the real win is not proving them wrong. It's living right without them. That's the kind of strength they never saw coming. You're still here, and that means something. It means you survived the storm they swore would break you. You're breathing, walking, trying, even if some days it still hurts to do so. That pain you feel isn't a weakness. It's proof that you loved with everything in you. It's the scar of a heart that stayed open long after it should have closed. And that says more about your strength than anything they did. People underestimate how long emotional wounds can last. There's no cast, no visible bruise, no date when it's supposed to heal. It lingers. Some days are better, others not so much. You find yourself doing okay, and then out of nowhere, something small knocks you back. A random song, a memory, a scent, someone laughing the way they used to. Grief for what you thought you had shows up when you least expect it. And that's not weakness. That's being human. You didn't choose the pain, but you have a choice now. You can use it. You can turn what broke you into something that builds you. And no, that doesn't mean pretending you're fine or rushing to look strong. It means giving yourself permission to heal at your own pace, to cry when you need to stop explaining yourself, to stop feeling guilty for loving someone who couldn't love you right. They didn't destroy you. They revealed you. They pushed you to the edge thinking you'd fall. But instead, you found the strength to fly. You started to rebuild, not to prove anything to them, but to remind yourself who you were before the damage, or maybe who you were always meant to be. Healing is real. It's not loud or dramatic. It's in the small things. Waking up without checking your phone for their message. Going the whole day without their name crossing your mind. Laughing without guilt. Being able to speak your truth without choking on it. Trusting yourself again. That's healing. And it doesn't happen all at once. It happens in tiny moments that add up over time. Some days it'll feel like you're going backward. That's normal. What matters is that you keep showing up, even if it's messy, even if it hurts. You're not the person you were when they left. You are wiser, stronger, sharper. Your eyes see through lies now. Your soul knows better. That old version of you, the one that begged for love, accepted crumbs, stayed silent to keep peace. They no longer exist. That person died in the fire. And from the ashes, someone else was born. Someone they no longer recognize. Someone they can't manipulate. You may still miss them sometimes. You may still miss who they pretended to be. But you don't miss how they made you feel. Confused, insecure, tired. You don't miss questioning your worth every time they pulled away. You don't miss the silence when you needed answers. The gaslighting, the passive aggression. The way they turned everything back on you. Missing them doesn't mean you want them back. It means you're still healing, and that's okay. Don't shame yourself for the love you gave. That love wasn't wasted. It taught you everything. It showed you your own capacity to care. It gave you a map of where you never want to go again, and that's priceless. You didn't lose them, they lost you. They lost someone who would have gone to war for them. And that loss, that's theirs to carry, not yours. One day, you'll thank this pain. It's shaping you. It's making room for something greater, for relationships that are soft, honest, and peaceful. For the kind of love that doesn't keep score, for people who meet you with clarity and presence. The pain cleared the path. Now the right ones will have space to find you. You won't need to beg anymore. You won't need to shrink yourself just to be loved. You won't tolerate confusion and emotional starvation, because now you know what it cost you, and you'll never pay that price again. There's a different kind of strength in choosing peace over chaos, in walking away when your heart still wants to stay, in choosing to heal instead of hurt back. That strength doesn't always get applause, but it's the kind that builds unshakable self-worth. You don't need revenge. You are the revenge. Your healing, your glow-up, your refusal to break. That is the answer to every lie they told about you. You were never too sensitive. You were never too much. You were just too real for someone who wasn't ready. That's not your fault. Stop carrying shame that doesn't belong to you. Stop wondering what you could have done differently. The truth is, they were committed to misunderstanding you. No matter how gentle you were, it wouldn't have changed them. They weren't looking for love. They were looking for control. And when they couldn't control you anymore, they left. That's not love. That's manipulation in disguise. But you saw through it. Eventually, you did. And that's what matters. You chose truth over comfort. You chose healing over bitterness. That makes you powerful. Not cold, not distant, not broken. Just powerful in a way they'll never understand. One day, you'll see someone and your heart won't flinch. You'll hear their name and feel nothing. You'll go places you used to avoid. You'll love again. Not in the same way, but wiser, slower, with eyes wide open. You'll know what red flags to walk away from. You'll know how to protect your peace. Not with walls, but with standards, with awareness, with grace. And that grace will carry you through setbacks, through doubts, through days when healing feels far away. Because grace doesn't demand perfection. It just asks that you keep going. It's okay if you're still hurting. It's okay if you still have questions. But know this, you are becoming someone you would be proud of. Someone who shows up, even with wounds. Someone who speaks truth, even with a shaking voice. Someone who loves again, without letting history repeat. Healing is not forgetting. It's remembering without breaking. It's seeing the scar and feeling power, not pain. It's knowing what happened and choosing to grow anyway. That's what makes you dangerous. Not bitterness, not revenge, but growth. Silent, steady, undeniable growth. The next time they hear about you, it won't be through your tears. It'll be through your success, your smile, your peace. They'll hear you're doing better, that you're glowing, that you found love, maybe with someone else or maybe just within yourself. And that will say everything, because they wanted you broken, but you healed. They wanted you confused, but now you see clearly. They wanted control, but now you walk in freedom. You're no longer chasing love, you're becoming it. For yourself, for your future, for every part of you they tried to destroy. You're not behind. You're not late. You're right on time. Healing at your own pace, growing at your own pace, and when you're ready, the world will meet the version of you that betrayal built. The version that doesn't beg, that doesn't settle, that doesn't flinch at loneliness, because you've learned to enjoy your own presence. You've become your own home, and in that silence they left behind, you built something stronger than love. You built self-respect. You built awareness. You built peace. So if you're still hurting, let that be okay. Just don't stop healing. Don't stop believing in the possibility of better, because better is coming. And when it arrives, it'll feel calm, real, effortless, no confusion, no games, just truth. Because you learned the hard way what love is not. And now, you'll never settle for less than what's real. This pain made you powerful, and power once awakened doesn't go back to sleep.